recording button and tell you that, okay, that we are now beginning as soon as I can get these slides to move. So our topic is teaching kids about money, the why, the when, the how, and Rob will be introducing himself when I turn over the slides to him in just a few minutes. But because we do have a lot of people in attendance who are new to financial social work, I thought I would share with all of you what this work is about. Just give you a very quick overview of financial social work. And at its core, this work is about personal, professional, financial, and social change. The core values all revolve around the principles and ethics and values of social work. So they're about societal change, social justice, human rights. And no, I did not paint these rocks, but I was lucky enough to find this picture where someone did obviously spend a lot of time creating those slides. So taking greater responsibility for your financial future requires more than just learning new financial skills. And that's because, if I can get, this is a process. And it's a process that is very personal, very individual, and a very emotional choice. So it is about choice. Our mission at the Center for Financial Social Work is to help men and women create sustainable long-term financial behavioral change. And change is very personal, individual, and emotional, and we make it on a daily and weekly and monthly basis. Sometimes we make it on a minute-by-minute or hour-to-hour basis. And it's heavily psychosocial, the model, because until and unless behavior changes, nothing changes. We want to help men and women create sustainable long-term financial behavioral change. And here we talk a little more about choice. The model is ongoing education, motivation, and support. We provide that through our very interactive websites and blogs and Facebook and Twitter and these monthly webinars and newsletters. So what's it really all about? The fact that our relationship with our money drives our financial behavior, and that ultimately creates our financial circumstances. That's at the heart of financial social work. And we look to change the conversation about money, to understand how behavioral it is and why behavior needs to change. We look to provide a different way of thinking about money and to offer a better way of working with clients around their financial money problems, issues. So if none of you have used this platform before, you should see up in the right-hand corner this box where you have the questions. You can ask us questions. If you're listening, by now you should either be on your telephone listening or using the mic and speakers. If you have questions, here's the question box, and you can type in that question when at your leisure. You know, if you think of something during the presentation, you can ask it then. Primarily, we will be answering all of your questions at the end of Rob's presentation. He will stay with me to answer any questions that do come in. He may take the whole hour to complete the presentation. We'll just have to see how that goes. But we will stay with you. So to hide the toolbar, you double click on that double arrow and it will go to the right-hand side of your screen, and to open it back up, you click on it again. So I'd like this session to be interactive. We will be asking you to raise your hand to participate in polls. I already told you we'll do the most of the Q&A at the end of the session. Right now, I'm going to start you off with a poll to get a sense of who our audience is. So I need to launch that poll, and then I will be turning it over to Rob. Let's see. I have some questions here, but I'm trying to, let me do these polls first. Okay, so I'm going to launch this first poll, and that poll is open. If you aren't one of the segments in the choices, because I can only offer 5 choices, you can go ahead and type that into either the chat box or the question box. I see that over a quarter of you don't fall into any of those categories, and we have about 65% of you have voted. We'll give you another few seconds, and we do have a broad audience, though. No teachers. So I'm going to, okay, we have 82% of you have voted. I'm going to count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we got to 85%. I'm going to close that poll, and now I'm going to share it with you, and you can see that almost half of our audience are financial literacy educators. We have about a fifth are parents, and about 20% work in asset building. Let's see if anybody wanted to share any other areas that you work in. Let's see. And okay, we have someone from a crisis intervention specialist. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so Rob, if you're ready, I'm going to turn this over to you, and you can introduce yourself to everyone and begin your presentation. Oh, I need to hide that poll. I need to,
And Rita, I am not seeing the actuator for the polls and questions here.
Okay. Okay, but you have some slides before your next poll, right?
Correct.
But the poll is still up, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm trying to find how to take it down and having a little trouble with that. Hide. There you go. Okay, Rob, take it over.
Are we on?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Terrific. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for taking time to share your precious time with us in the afternoon to talk about kids and money. And this is something that I got involved with about 11 years ago. And just as a matter of introduction, I usually like to show a picture of this because I go to so many webinars and you never know who you're talking with or to. And the nice thing about this is that I can, give myself some more height and take an inch or so off my waist. But I was actually born in Newfoundland, Canada, and after leaving high school, got involved with commercial flying and flew corporate aircraft for about 10 years and went back to school.
Excuse me, Rob. Rob.
Yes.
I don't know. Rob, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we can't see your slides. Do you have something you need to click to say yes? Okay, there you are. Okay, good.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much. So let me, well, you can see that now, and to continue then, I guess, again, my background is primarily in banking and finance for the last number of years, 22 years in banking and finance. And this seems to have, here we go. And with the, personal stuff about my activities in that with reading and taking family to movies and that, I got very involved with financial education about 10 years ago and really started with the business side of it and created a number of workshops in that for corporations and was actually doing presentations within companies with employees. But I quickly found that as a country, if we were ever going to solve this problem long term, then we had to turn our attention to how we teach our kids, the next generation. And this is my beautiful 2.5-year-old granddaughter that really gives a passion to why I want to do this going forward and why it's so important. And we all know the pressure that our young people are on today under from a number of different areas as it pertains to money in that. And we're just risking their futures, I think, if we don't do something different. They've really been pressured a lot by the marketing, the media, their peer group, and when it comes to money, it becomes that issue of sometimes even self-worth or how we value ourselves and or others when it comes to the things and the stuff we buy. And that's unfortunately one of the emotional pieces of the money. So here's what we're going to talk about this afternoon. We all know that we have a problem in the country and have for a number of years as it pertains to financial, what I would call competence, not necessarily literacy. What I've done is gone back and looked at some of the elements of the past, how we got here, what we missed along the way, maybe some changes we made throughout time that has brought us to this point. And then I also turned my attention away from focusing strictly on the content of financial education to how we actually teach it and what are some of the elements of how we actually learn these things. And I've really come up with some interesting I think connections and some of the gaps, identified a couple of gaps that are existing in why we're not truly as successful with financial education as we can be. Certainly we all know the emotion around money, and I want to kind of bring something to light that was very interesting and I think changed my attitude somewhat about money and again how we teach it, particularly to our children. And then the idea that really hands-on and experience matters, and then talk about what I believe is the right solution for the problem. Now I'll tell you right off the bat that it is not my job here today to sell you anything. What I do want to do is raise the question that if to look at what is it we're doing around and with financial education, are we happy with the results that we're getting? And is there something we could be doing different and better? It's not to suggest for a moment that financial education isn't critical. That's not the point. It is absolutely. It is important that we know how to analyze and to be able to buy a car with the right financing or a house and so on and so forth. But we're missing, and the research is telling us that we have some gaps in the effectiveness of all of the good information that's going on. So that's kind of gives you a sense of where we're going. So my first question for you this afternoon, and if you look at the right-hand side of your box, you can see where you can raise your hand. And when I ask you this, I want you to go ahead and click on yes if this is something that you would do. And the question is, how many of you, as you can see there, would hand your teenager $1,000 and have the confidence they would handle it responsibly? How many of you would actually do that? Go ahead and raise your hands if you would be comfortable in doing that.
Rob, we have an underwhelming response. Somebody did raise, well, somebody raised the hand, yeah. But it might have been for something else. I'm okay. Guessing it was for something else. I don't know, though. We have a couple of hands.
And that's not surprising to me, because as I do this, I ask the same question with live audiences. The response is about 2%. So about 2 out of every 100 people, parent, grandparent, would have the confidence in our teenagers. Why is that? As we look at yet we'll hand them the keys to a $20,000, a $30,000, or $40,000 weapon called an automobile, and not without the same kind of reluctance, I guess. Yes, there's concern. Yes, we don't want our kids to be damaged and hurt and in accidents and that. But when it comes to money, there seems to be this emotional tie to us that keeps us from allowing our kids to get the same kind of practical, hands-on experience with it before we send them off into the world. And I ask you to kind of contemplate this. How many of our kids will actually end up driving an automobile? And I dare say, for a variety of reasons, almost 100% of them. How many of our kids and our young people will have to manage money in their lifetime? And I think you know the answer to that is 100%. Yet again, there's this reluctance to teach them to transfer that responsibility and experience as we would something else. Here's a number of the challenges that I've found over the last 10 or 11 years. And obviously, there's a lack of financial instruction in our homes. We don't talk about money unless and until it becomes an issue. There's little or no hands-on experience, and there's a growing amount of financial education in our schools, but it's not being required, nor is it being tested for the most part. Certainly, the pressure from peers in retail environments, and going to the mall is entertainment. Spending money is patriotic. So all of these pressures that come to bear on our young people, without the platform and the foundation of a good decision-making core, has been, I think, two of the major gaps. And what I'm going to deal with this afternoon are the three issues that you see highlighted there. The lack of financial instruction at home, to be able to transfer some of that experience onto our kids, and then to be able to provide them with a decision-making foundation. Here's our first poll question for you, and if you could pull that up, Rita, because again, unfortunately, I don't have that screen on my area here.
Okay, you need to give it back to me, Rob, for a second.
Oh, I need to pass it back? Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. All right, folks, so let me go ahead and put that poll up there for you. And okay, so here's the question. Which might be more likely to cause financial problems? You can pick more than one if you feel the need to. Okay. We have about 20% of you have voted. See if we can get a little higher. And we have some pretty strong feelings here. We have 70% of you. Anybody else want to vote? Okay, so we will go 5. This is your last chance to vote. 4, 3, 2, 1. And we got to 81%. And I will close it, and I will share the results with you. Okay.
Interesting.
Isn't it? Go ahead, Rob. You can respond.
Yeah. Okay. And if you would give it back to me then. Yeah, my point about this, folks, is that I'm a firm believer that money or the lack of it is never, ever, ever the problem. Money really is a result of all of those decisions and choices we make in our lives. Yes, the level of education, the job, the career we pursue, if and when to have a child, and yes, if and when to save for the future. All of those are the elements that go into, and we need to realize, that determine our financial outcome. And how do we get there? This particular slide speaks to one of the programs that we deliver to elementary schools. And we start with and dealing with the foundational piece of money, that to teach children that true wealth is more than just about money. It's about pursuing the things you're passionate about, the things to have a life of happiness and contentment is doing the things that bring us joy in our lives. And that includes career, picking that right person to be with, and it's surrounded by these, what we call a common sense set of core values and concepts. You know, that conscience attitude, the idea of hard work and having a good attitude, the ability to make the right choices and have integrity in those choices that we make. And it's been really interesting as we've delivered this classroom material, as you see down below, to primarily elementary school students in grades 4 or 5, 6, and it's been very interesting to me to see the responses from our students that don't want to take risk in their lives and believe that people who are successful never ever fail. Now, if those are the prisms that our young people are making decisions about their lives on, then we need to be able to change that. And so one of the very basic ideas is putting that root system in to help them to be able to make better choices, and as I say, that not only anchor their lives, but as well as their money habits. But what I want to really spend our time with this afternoon, I can't get my slides to advance here.
You can't?
Okay, here we go. One of the things I'm really a proponent of is that we can't understand how to change the future unless we understand where we've come from in the past. And if we continue to do the same old things over and over again, I mean, we all know what that brings about. So what I did was went back and looked at some of the elements of the changes and the programs that other countries and have implemented in the past. And we go back, I mean, 200 years to find that in the 1800s there was a big emphasis, particularly in the European countries, on savings. And not only was it on savings, but it was the access to a safe place for low-income families to put their money. And these savings banks, postal savings banks, school savings programs were all targeted at lower income populations because the countries and the governments then and the societies understood the very importance of having a financially stable population. So, and it wasn't only about the awareness and the emphasis on saving, but it was also the critical point of giving our low-income populations access to be able to have a place to put their savings. Postal savings banks grew out of the idea that even you know, small rural communities had a post office, and it had a center or it was a place of prominence in many communities. And it was a place that people could comfortably go and put their money and have some assurance that it would be there. It was not until the 1910 era in the early 1900s that the U.S. finally started to emphasize some of these same elements, and we created our postal savings bank, the school savings programs, and so on. And obviously the savings bonds of the early 40s with the emphasis of repairing and rebuilding not only our country but the European countries. So that was kind of the context of where we came from. So where did we come from as a country? And I say us as to mean U.S. as well. But we turned in the mid-1950s, we turned our attention to a consumer-based society. We expanded our installment loans. We actually abolished our savings bank because it was fraught with regulation and just too much oversight, and our banking system was adamantly opposed to it. In the mid-70s, we deregulated our credit cards. We went from a charge card that was to be paid off in 30 days to now, and we know where our credit cards are today, that, you know, in some cases, unfortunately, individuals are taking 20 and 30 years to pay off, a set of tires or that last vacation. And then our banking system started to reject small deposit accounts. So again, you can see by the emphasis here, it wasn't that we were telling people not to save and not that we didn't think it important, but there was a real emphasis shift onto the consumer side of it, and it has brought us to where we are today. And this is a graph I've been using now for about the last, 8 years to tell this story. And coming out of the banking industry, the pictures and graphs, I guess, have some meaning for me, but they complete the picture for me. And this was our country between the years of 88 and 2008 at the time of the economic downturn, and that we went from 710 billion in spending, and this was at a national debt level, to about $2.6 trillion. Now those are big numbers and they're somewhat interesting, but to me it was about, and by the way, these numbers represent credit cards, car loans, and student loans only. None of our real estate, none of our other spending. It was basically what fueled our lifestyles. But this didn't tell the whole story. The real story for me was the other piece of it, which was our personal savings rate, which, by the way, back in the mid-60s and 70s was at an all-time high of about 11 or 12%. And we went from 7% as a national savings rate to a negative 0.2% at the end of 2008. Because if you look at that 20-year history in our country, I mean, the economy was speeding along, if you will. Unemployment was at historic low rates. My real estate, if I owned it, was increasing. The stock market was going up. So there was a general sense of financial well-being in our country. And if I didn't own a house and my neighbor did, I wanted to be a part of that. And the banking industry and the finance industry gave us a way to do that because they stopped requiring us to put 10 or 20% down on our cars or 5 or 10 or 20% down on our homes. They took away the necessity for us to save any money at all. And of course we were told the economy and the value of our homes and stock markets would go up forever, right? This is what happened. And then at the end of 2008, when the economic bust happened and we had no money in our pocket to continue our lifestyle, and the financial institutions cut off our ability to borrow money, we got stuck. And this is what happened. We've had, these are kind of just little pictures of economic downturns, if you will, that we've had in the past. And there's been about 20 of them in the last century. And there will be more in the future. But the difference between those and now is that in the past we had some money in the bank. We had some resources to be able to, contain our lifestyles and continue to spend at a reduced level, but certainly spend, whereas unlike today where we had no money at all. And when the financial institutions cut off our ability to borrow more money to spend, this is where we got stuck. The reason I go through all of that is to talk about this was no longer about a few individuals who may have been irresponsible with credit cards. This was a real change in our society, in our mindset about how we viewed the value of saving and or the value of spending. So, the formula for insanity? Doing the same things over and over and over and over again and expecting different results. We've got to do things differently if we expect that we're going to continue and grow. What I did was went back and look at the effectiveness of a number of the financial education programs and efforts around our country. And there's a couple of supporting pieces of research I want to share with you, and this is one of them from the New America Foundation. And again, the emphasis is that it's not just about calculating interest rates, it's about making those rational choices about spending and saving and overcoming that, what we call behavioral economics, which, as you can see, by the way, at the bottom, has been around for 200 years, but we have not taken it into real account. Or I take that back. The folks who market to us understand this very well, but we have not incorporated the idea of behavioral economics into our financial education programs, and that's what we need to do. The other piece of research I want to share with you is out of the University of Florida. Dr. Mike Gutter up there, who did this research with university students back 2 years ago now, that classes were increasing personal financial knowledge, but as you can see there, it was not changing risky behavior. So my question for these programs and for us today is that, how do we measure success? If it isn't about changing somebody's habits and behaviors, then really what have we done for them? And as I'm sitting here, I'm looking at an article from the Jumpstart Coalition for Personal Financial Literacy, June of this year. And just to one quotation from a noted professor said that financial education for some consumers appears to increase confidence, but without improving ability leads to worse decisions. So again, the idea is there's a gap here with our delivery of financial education, and we need to understand where it is and what it is. Well, what Dr. Gutter found the missing link to be with his study, the missing link was social learning. Social learning is that basic interaction between a parent and a child, a grandparent and a child, a teacher and a child, to not only tell them the right way to do things, but then to demonstrate the positive behaviors that will keep them from those risky behaviors that you see now on your screen. But there's a barrier out there that I find with a lot of adults today, is that there's a lack of confidence in many cases of their own abilities or their own struggles with money, and they don't want to, they're reluctant to talk with their kids about money. Of course, the saying is we'd probably rather talk to our 14-year-old daughters, have the sex conversation, than we would talk to our kids about money. And I find that to be true at some level. And there's a belief that our children, our young children, are too young to understand this difficult concept and so on. And then always I get the resistance one that I don't have any money, I can't do it. What we're going to do is show you a way to very simply overcome a number of those. But the first, I guess the thing I want to share with you is that like when we taught our daughter how to ride a bicycle, we didn't get her a book on balance and motion. We got her butt on the bicycle. And I suggest to you, and it's been proven and we have experience with it, that that's kind of the approach we need to take with money and our children. Here's a little quick exercise I want you to do, and you can raise your hand. I have a very simple set of instructions, a very simple task that I want you to do for us right now, and it should take you, as soon as you hear the instructions, you should be able to complete the task. And go ahead and raise your hand on that, okay? So here's your instructions. Sorry, folks, my computer's gotten frozen up here. Here we go. I'm sorry. Pardon me. Here's your instructions. I want you to ches the glitz. Okay? Now, as soon as you've completed your task, I want you to go ahead and raise your hand. Hello?
Okay, Rob. No hands up.
No hands.
What a surprise.
What a surprise. Well, you're right. I mean, that's just a terminology to demonstrate that a lot of times we will give our kids instructions. Brush your teeth, wash your hands, don't use too much toilet paper. Whatever it is, and if we're just giving them those raw set of verbal or written instructions, they have to somehow decode this message that we're giving to them. And we all parents, every parent and every teacher models for their children or their students. But without the modeling attached to the instructions, it's very difficult for our children to understand and to translate that. And the point I want to make with this is that while we may be telling our kids not to use credit cards or tell them that they need to save, yet we never take them to the bank, the instructions are going to fall flat, and it's not going to be very meaningful to them. We also have to understand, and here are a couple of the elements that you probably won't see or heard talked about in any of your other presentations, that I wanted to go back and look at how we actually intake information, how our kids learn, how we learn things when we start off. And one of the interesting things I saw here, and there was a real connection for me, that of all the space in our little brains that are devoted to the 5 senses of taste, touch, smell, and yes, visual, 75% of that space is dedicated to our visual. I don't think probably that's a surprise to anybody, but here was the connection for me that I to this day recall when I was 4 and 5 and 6 years old, that my mother would bend over our old electric stove, which she, after running out of matches, you know, she was a lifelong smoker, God bless her, and she'd light her cigarette at the same time pointing at me and telling me, "Robbie, don't you ever smoke. This is so, don't you ever do this." Well, I started smoking when I was 10 years old. Now, fortunately, I quit when I was in my late 20s, but that was so vivid to me, that memory. And I connected with today's parents and conditions that, you know, imagine yourself in a checkout line someplace, and you're telling your child not to use credit cards, yet out whips this piece of plastic, and away it goes. Guess what they're more likely to remember? The verbal instruction or the visual aspect of what that card connected to with the purchase you just made. If we don't understand these very basic elements of how this happens, then we're not going to get through to our kids. The other piece of it is connecting the emotional side of things. And with the brain to understand that it's this feeling machine. I mean, there's probably nobody on the line today that doesn't recall where they were, you know, at 9/11 and what you were doing, because there's such an emotional tie to that time. Or when you were driving today or yesterday or the day before, you saw a lot of cars that were white and red or blue or gray or whatever the color was. But remember the moment you bought a particular car. The day you drove that home, you could identify that exact car 100 times around you on your short trip home, because there was that emotional tie to it. And the connection for me in this was that for the last 10 years, I've been telling a lot of my audiences that I believed we didn't save as a country because we didn't know what saving felt like. We knew there was emotional tie to money, and we certainly knew what spending felt like. It felt good. But we didn't save because we didn't know what that felt like, that delayed gratification and so on. Well, I was wrong, because I've started asking a lot more of our audience over the last 6 to 8 months these very questions, what emotions and that. And here's the answers I've been getting on the saving side of it. Now, while throughout both of these responses there are some positive responses, you know, somebody felt proud that they were saving, somebody felt relieved, and so on. But look at the intensity of the emotion and the polar opposite of what these responses represent for somebody, you know, even thinking about doing these. But the troubling thing about this particular response is what these responses were from middle school students that I've been talking with. And if you don't remember any other slide or piece of information from this presentation today, remember this one. Because when an 11-year-old young lady gives me the term adrenaline rush when she spends, and she becomes angry or mad when she has to save, we have a problem. And we've got to better understand how to deal with that problem and how to give them a better set of emotional tools to be able to deal with money in the future. Here's our another one of our poll questions that I want to start talking about. Two of the main elements, two of the main tools we use for teaching our kids about money. And if you would...
you want me to do it, Rob?
Yes, I don't have the ability here. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to pass it back.
Right.
Here you go.
Okay. So I have this poll for you, which is which I'm having a little trouble showing you. Okay. And I apologize for that. Okay. And this poll is, I'm launching it right now, which mid-1700s program are we referring to for teaching children about money? Okay. Everybody can wake up now. We're asking you to be part of this presentation. Okay. We have some very strong feelings on this. We have about 40% have voted. Could we, okay, we're over 50%. And okay, come on, the rest of you. We're kind of stuck at 78%. It's all anonymous, everybody. Let's get over 80% and we'll close it. Okay, so I'll go 5, 4, 3, 2. Anybody else? Okay, we'll close this. We'll show you the response. And Rob, you can go ahead and talk about that.
Wow, okay. Okay.
Just so everybody knows, I didn't know the answer either, so.
Okay. Well, it's kind of a little, okay, now how do I get my, sorry, the answer actually is, was unemployment insurance. There is the element, the piggy bank aspect I'm going to talk about in just a moment in our second slide. But the point that I want to make with, here we go. The point I want to make about this is that actually the two programs that we do use with kids and money are actually based either in poverty or with unemployment. Actually, the allowance was the precursor to unemployment insurance in Great Britain. Back in the 1700s, it was their weekly allowance for those that were unfortunately unemployed. But we employ it today in a little bit of a different manner, and I wanted to share this with you because I think it's significant and goes back to one of the pieces of internal motivation that we've been doing some research on. And mostly when we use allowances today, we're mostly using them to influence our kids' behavior. Again, as you see there, make your bed, take the trash out, whatever the case may be. And what happens is, and this happens, folks, with adult audiences as well, when we provide external incentives and bonuses and things like that, is that when those things are employed, we actually damage a person's individual desire to what I call the joy of reading the book or doing whatever it is that they're involved with. And it may diminish over time that attractiveness for that sort of motivation. And it really sends a signal that on the front end, when we're doing these preloaded or front-end loaded incentives, that we actually are signaling that we really don't have the confidence that they'll do the job. And it creates that growing reliance on an external incentive for their success, and takes away from them doing things that are really considered to be family responsibility. The other element was the piggy bank. These actually date back to the late 1400s, when only the rich people could use the banking system of the day, and the poor people had created this red clay dish, and the name of the clay was spelled pig, as you see there, P-Y-G-G, but they're based in poverty. And think of it, I mean, and today even, or if we use them, where did we keep our piggy banks? They were either in our room, on our dresser, somewhere close. We're still not using the banking system. And piggy banks, I suggest, are more about hoarding than they are about saving and investing, because they could be filled with buttons or marbles or some other object that, and many times, you know, they contain the pennies and that people don't have much value for. So I think both of those, the allowances and the piggy banks, I just bring that up for your thought and consideration, because I'm a proponent of getting kids into the banking system at a young age so they can take advantage of growing their money. And I'm looking at my clock here. We're about 10 minutes to 3. We're going to be very tight on the time, but we will stay after our time to answer any of your questions. So here's
Go ahead, Rob. We can just skip this one. This poll asked, you want to skip it, Rob?
Yeah, okay, let's do that. So, and I get asked this question quite often, you know, how much should I pay my kids, how often, and at what age?
Around the issue of allowance.
Around the issue of allowance, yes. I'm sorry. And in many cases, the reluctance or the resistance is, I don't have any money, and if I do, it's inconsistent. Now, I will say that, I mean, there are going to be folks on the line today that use piggy banks and allowances very effectively, and their kids will go on and be fine. You know, good, keep doing what you're doing. But for the most part, we're not being successful with using these two. And here's a way that a family can use the money that they're already spending on and with their kids to use a portion of it as that teaching tool. Because sometimes what we do, we consider allowances to be kind of a penalty, or I have to take money from somewhere else to create another source of money to pay this allowance, and it becomes somewhat of a challenge. But every family spends money on and with their kids. And as noted there, many of it, or much of it, is for the basic necessities. But as we look at the research on our families, we also spend about 12% of our incomes on non-basics, the other stuff. So, and just for illustration, this may be your family, it may not be, but just for illustration purposes, I've chosen the median household income, not individual income, for a family of 4 in the U.S. And the latest numbers are that. And then if you work down through it, you know, a family is spending about $500 a month on going out to dinner, taking the kids out to movies, buying books and the video games and clothes and so on. But if you look at it, our kids do not have any responsibility for that money or any of the consequences of the choices that are being made. They also have no power over that. Yet they benefit from the being there with the family and the outings that we have and whatever the event that we participate in. So what our approach is to utilize a portion of that number per month, and then shift a portion of that. You can shift all of it, some of it, I suggest at least half of it, over to the child, along with the responsibility for paying for those things you're paying for now. So before everybody has a heart attack, again, consider this. This is money that's already being spent on and with the kids. What I'm suggesting is you take a slice of it and shift it over to the child along with the responsibility. So when you go to the movie, they pay for their movie. When you go to dinner, they pay for their dinner and their soda, or if they want something extra, they use, quote unquote, their money to buy for it. Now what you've done is you've, again, taken a piece of the money that's already being spent and they're benefiting from, and you're making them responsible for it. And the reason why, so I don't tell anybody how much to pay your child. I will tell you that I believe it should be no more than once a month, certainly no more than twice a month, because if the old allowances, you know, it was for a few dollars a month for, or excuse me, a few dollars for a week. And as I found with my daughter, if I blew the money in the first couple of days, it was only a few more days before I replenished it for her. What I was probably doing was reinforcing her spending habit versus really giving her good money management. But the longer the period, it forces your children to now have to think about and manage their money, just like you and I have to do. So, and make it relevant to your particular family's lifestyle and income, so that now it's not, it doesn't become a penalty, if you will, if you just arbitrarily pick a number. I'm going to pay you $10 a week, yet our spending habit is $200 a week. And I know that's an extreme, but the idea is to make it relevant to your family. I have a single mom on food stamps using this approach, and she pays her son $2 a month. And we have families in California with the same approach, and the kids are spending $180 on a helmet for the equestrian show. It works if you work this out for whatever your situation is and use the resources that you already have versus taking from somewhere else. Okay? Here's the other piece to our True Wealth program, that is the classroom-based piece. This is the hands-on approach to teaching kids about money and that you can use in the home. And it kind of fell into a nice acronym with the kids, right? So you keep some of your money for that emergency, or if you want that computer or the iPod, or, you know, a music camp trip next summer, a portion of your money gets kept in your account for those particular purposes. There is a vast difference between saving my money for short-term purchases and investing for the long term. Any money that we set aside for investing never, ever, ever gets spent. And this ends up being their financial freedom in the future. And I'll give you some numbers here that kind of emphasizes that in a minute. Donate to be a part of the community, the importance of giving back to others for community, faith, and charity. And certainly they're spending money for teaching them about making good choices and not to spend too much. So here's kind of the little bit of the whys and that and the how. Now let's put some structure to it, so that when you pay your child, whatever the amount that you're going to pay them, and again, we're just using the $100 per month as an example, 20% goes in their keep account for planning for those events or that emergency or whatever it is. 20% goes in their investment account and goes into a bank or credit union. Please open those accounts. And even though interest rates are not that high these days, it's about the habit, it's not about the amount. And then certainly their donation money or their faith money, and then their spending. And as you see down there below, pay them no more than twice a month, preferably once. Encourage that entrepreneurial thinking to help them find other ways to earn more money. But whatever the source of money, whether it's from grandma and grandpa for babysitting and chores, or the money that I'm suggesting with the $100 a month from parents, they always allocate it. They always use the formula that you see there in front of them. That way we can teach them a money management system that they can use the rest of their lives. Okay? So this then, the worksheet identifies the how much. the accounts tell you why and how to put the money together, and then the formula kind of puts the structure to it, so that now you have a complete program that gives you some confidence while you can build on that. And again, when we talk about young children, teaching them, we've dealt with families with 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and so on. At that age, and again, I get this question quite often, well, they're too young to understand this. You're absolutely right. But what they do understand is that I put 2 of my bills into my blue wallet, or 5 of my bills into my green wallet, and then that gives you time to build the very basic foundational piece, so that when they start getting into financial education classes, the attitude that we're seeing with a lot of our kids now is that how much money, or give me money to spend, it's how can I make my money grow? Because when we separate money like this outside of the limited application of the piggy bank, the either-or proposition of save or spend, or usually it's just save to spend, right? Well, this way we've separated their money, and they understand that they can do different things with their money all at the same time. I can spend some of it while I give to others, while I invest for the future, and save some for something that I want to buy. When they start to understand that there's more things they can do with their money simultaneously, we're actually seeing that they're disconnecting some of the emotion around money. And we're seeing a change in their behavior and a change in attitude, and we're reducing that anxiety every time now that the parent goes to the store, because now when they ask for something in the store, and usually the answer is no, you don't need it, no, we can't afford it. Our kids now, when we go on this, we remind them when we go to the store, bring your spending money, and if they say, I would like to have this, and provided it's within the boundaries of what you deem to be okay for them to purchase, your answer to them is, of course you can have that. Immediately followed by, how much do you have in your account? So you do 2 things. One, you eliminate the argument. They can't answer or argue with yes. And you just made them responsible for making a choice about how they want to spend their money. And then they have to live with the consequences, and that's where the lessons come in. How you do this, we can do it with an old, the envelope system. And here's just some pictures of some envelopes that we put together. I mean, turn it into a project. Get some envelopes and have your kids color them. A blue one and a red one and a green one and so on, and then help them with that distribution. Don't turn this into trying to teach them how to put together a mortgage portfolio. That's not what it's about. It's about, again, teaching them the very basics, and they can do different things with it. For the older kids, you can use a very simple Excel spreadsheet, or a set of plastic jars, or anything that can give them the visual about the separation of money and how it can happen. That's the very simple system of this. And the question of, what age should I begin? Folks, I will tell you, I'm not a child psychologist. I don't have any higher learning, but I am a parent. And I know what happened in our lives. And as I look across the, when our daughter went from being a couple of years old to when she was 16, and before the time when, into those teenage years when she had more outside activities and outside influences from her peer group, my influence began to wane the moment she was born, and her independence started to increase. So I really believe that just from a practical standpoint, this is kind of the window of opportunity for really teaching them anything for that matter. It's not just about money, but again, keeping it very basic, that you can build a good foundation for them to be able to learn the other valuable lessons. Why is starting so early so important? And we all know this. I mean, here's just a brief quick example of what $20 a month can turn into if we start them at the age of 5, and we put that $20 into the invest account. And I think I use 6%, but don't get hung up on whether it's 2% or 12% or whatever. The relationship is still the same, and it's more about the time element. If we lose those early years And another example of what happens is that, you know, after investing, your 5-year-old is now turned 64, and the year between 64 and 65, their fund went from $143,000 to $152,000, or $9,000. They're still only investing $240 a month. So that time element of money, yes, interest rates are important, but if we start our kids early enough, they will be able to find that financial freedom that maybe a lot of us didn't have. So now it's up to you, and we're not going to do any polling here with this, but these are just some questions I want you to consider as we get ready to wrap up here. What things that really kind of emphasized or affirmed something that you already believed? What did you possibly see from a new angle maybe that would help out with either your family, or if you're teaching students, and we do that again on our broad base. We deal with some of the largest school systems here in Florida. And what change or what new direction might you take because of what you've learned? As you go away, think of those things and how they may be taken into account. Nobody ever won a race, got a great job, accomplished the highest that they wanted to if they ever started out believing that they couldn't. The young golfer Garcia, just you know, as he finished up the Masters tournament there, and he's probably one of the best golfers in the world, and he said to the reporter, he said, "I don't think I'm good enough," and he was right. Because he hasn't played very good golf at all, and that's just one example. And there are many that you know, but I really believe that our kids are capable of astounding things if we continue to tell them that they can do and they have the ability to do, and show them the right way. Thank you very much, everybody, for your precious time. I apologize for going over for a few minutes, but I'm very committed to trying to change the way that our country and our families teach their kids about money, and I want to be a help for you in doing that. Thank you again for your precious time, and we will, if I can get back to the screen, I will give it back to you, Rita, and
Okay, Rob, I got it.
And I just realized I had my contact information on that last slide. And
Rob, this will be, you know, we recorded this, so everyone will get a link. Nope, I have to get mine back up here. We will have a link on the recording, and everyone will be able to watch it and take any information that they want.
Okay, outstanding. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to go to, well, before we go to the questions, I just wanted to share with all of you that our webinar next month is on, I'm calling it Money Is, Money Isn't, and Money Can, Money Can't. And that will be at 2 o'clock on July 18th. And we'll be looking at the beliefs people hold and how that shapes their financial circumstances. And I want everyone to know that when you leave, there is an evaluation that will pop up so that you can tell us, you know, if this was what you expected, and if there's anything, any topics you'd like us to speak more about or have presentations on, or if you want Rob to come back and teach us more. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead. Rob, we do have some questions, and we will start asking them. We also have some wonderful feedback for you from people. Okay. So there was a question on the recording, and you will get a link probably in the next 24 hours or so to the recording. And on our Financial Social Work Facebook, you can access all of our recorded webinars from this year. You can also download our new ebook on financial social work. Okay, so one woman did share with us that she would give one person $1,000 to her teenager, but just because she trusts her teenager. Certainly, she is not all teens.
Understood. Good comment.
Somebody wants to know, what does responsible money management look like for teenagers?
Well, I think it has the attributes that they're making wise choices about what they're spending on. They are putting some of their money away. One of the elements, and it brings up a great point too. One of the things I've seen, particularly and what I call the piggy bank mentality, the either or application of save and or spend, has really divided our country. And by the way, folks, this is more than just the problem in the U.S. Canadian families, I know, I've talked to families in the United Kingdom, in Australia and New Zealand, they're all struggling with the same concepts. But it's about, boy, now I just lost my thought. The save and spend. Well, if you look around, there doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground. We either have individuals who are savers or individuals who are spenders. In my investigation and conversation with those who are the savers, we know spenders need to get that under control, and we've gone through that, I think, primarily this afternoon. But savers, interestingly enough, that I found many of them view money as a security issue for them. And there are emotional ties to that as well. And that they don't spend money because it's more of that, again, security and comfort. And those individuals, those children that, we proudly congratulate for saving, 100% of everything they earned last summer. Well, when they get out onto their own, that saving at that high level is not a realistic expectation. So what we're trying to do with our approach to this is give all of our children more of a balanced approach to money, what it looks like for spending and saving, and take that emotional issue away from them.
Okay, great, thanks. Someone said, I would hand my teenager $1,000 and he would handle it as well as I would expect from a 17-year-old. And couldn't you look at that and say, what he values is different from what I value? Does that make his spending irresponsible?
Well, I don't know without, I guess, more details. What's he spending his money on? We all have, my wife and I each have our own individual little, what we call our fun accounts, money that we just spend on things we have an interest in. And quite frankly, sometimes, my purchases aren't, the most, are certainly one she would raise her eyebrow at. And I do the same thing to her. But what we have to remember, I think, in that's part of the freedom of making choices. And what we don't want our kids to do is go out and buy things that are either harmful or something like that. But that's the experience, I guess, and the consequence of making those choices on the front end, if that helps.
Rob, I think that question was asked early on before you introduced the 4 different envelopes or spending components. And
right.
I think that you would probably, after all the time you've spent together and everything, I think you would probably say that if that young person had, that was that person spending money, although, $1,000 is a lot of money, if that young person had savings and had investments and was donating to charity, and covering all those bases, then if that's really just discretionary money, then it is up to that young person to make that decision. That's what I...
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And
I think we better move on. I have some more questions.
That's good.
Can
Go ahead.
can the decline in the personal savings be linked to trickle-down economics of the Reagan era?
No, I don't think so. I think what we saw there was a true, as I mentioned, a shift in our society, our societal attitudes. These are, a savings rate is a personal choice. So it had nothing to do, I don't think, with trickle-down economics. I think it had more to do with the marketing, why I go through that history of the savings from 200 years ago and those attitudes. Let me make the point here that two things. One, Japan still has the largest postal savings bank in the world. They have $3 trillion, which is 1.5 times the size of J.P. Morgan. And they're all very small accounts. They're anything, in the hundreds or even small thousands. And in fact, they're built to not push people, but encourage people to go into the banking system, the traditional banking system, once they've reached a certain level. The Livre A bank, savings bank in France, has over 12 million small savings accounts. So again, it goes back to, I think, just the consumerism attitude that we shifted to as a society versus one governmental attitude versus another.
I would have to agree with that, Rob. Thank you. How do you help teach kids the value of money if you are an outside educator, not a parent, and they don't have a concept for money yet if they aren't earning anything or having to pay for anything?
Great question. That's one of the dilemmas that we're looking at. In fact, I'm working with a couple of school systems right now to address that very problem. I think one of the biggest gaps that we have right now is that we have not connected what I call the DNA strand for effective financial education, and that is connecting parents with their kids, with the school system, and with the banking system. And the anchors, the two end anchors, are the parents and the school system. That's why we've chosen the pathway with the True Wealth curriculum to put those elements into the school system at the same time, and it also teaches the fundamental ideas and concepts of the kids' approach. But then we turn around and we get the parents involved with that school to provide the kids' approach. We bring the concept to them at home so that the kids can then get access to real money. And then so we've now connected the learning continuum, if you will, together, and there's a consistency of message and language between what the kids are learning in school about making good choices, about wants versus needs, about the risk-reward aspects of it. And we've also then, the message goes home with their parents, and they can apply it to the practical application through the keep, invest, donate, and spend. Great question.
Well, but Rob, I mean, you have this curriculum and you're very invested in it, and it has, a well thought through concept. But for this person asking the question, I would like to say that I hear your frustration. I'm not clear whether you are a teacher. It said that no one was a teacher attending today, and maybe you just didn't put in that you were a teacher. But I would encourage you to be a good role model, to take whatever opportunities you do have, if you're a family friend or an aunt or a relative or a neighbor, to discuss, if you're out shopping with a child, or if a child talks about what he or she wants, to show that you are a safe person to talk to about money, and that you're willing to listen and talk about money. So I believe that there are things you can do. Would you agree, Rob?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, thank you. And I missed my wife is a 40-year veteran of the elementary school system, having been a teacher herself, and she's primarily been the one that's guided me through this and making some of these connections. So you're right, and we do work with after-school programs We're trying to work with Boys and Girls Clubs, Head Start programs, any of those that I hear that frustration to be able to change that. And that's one of the reasons why we have, I think, to this point been somewhat ineffective with really changing the mindsets and habits, the behaviors that we have.
Well, there's all kinds of, you mentioned Jumpstart. There are all kinds of organizations researching, what our young people are being taught, aren't being taught, what they do know. And we as a country come in, I think, fourth as far as what adults know about money and money management. So it is a big issue, and there's, I think, only 7 or 8 states that mandate teaching financial literacy in the schools. It's a hot topic. It's a huge, 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 and many more huge needs. And I would say to anyone still on the call, look for those teaching moments if you don't have the kind of curriculum we're talking about today. And you can certainly, if you're in a position of any kind in relationship with children, you can try Rob's method. It's really not, undoable without his expertise. He gave you, the basics of it, right, Rob?
Oh, absolutely. I encourage that. But again, just to kind of emphasize the vastness or the importance of this, I guess, is more likely. A quote that I was just at a recent national conference for United Way, and the CEO was talking about this issue in their world, and I mean they're all over the world in so many countries, and he said, unlike our mindset about health and obesity issues, we still consider the personal finance condition to be an individual issue, not a national issue. If we do not comprehend the national implications of a financially unhealthy population, the outcomes will be just as devastating. And so there are gaps, there are places that we're not, that we could do better on. The challenge for us and the need for us is to continue these conversations and to raise the level and identify those areas that were not being totally effective, and keep those messages going, that if we're truly going to change this around and give our kids the future that they so deserve, we as the adults in the population need to be bold enough to seek out that change.
Here's one great content about lack of foundational values that lead to positive financial behaviors. My question is, I understand that children may be missing these, but what happens when the parents don't have these values as a baseline because it hasn't been in their experience? In the work I do, I see the need to teach the parents before they can teach the kids. I would say that's true.
Absolutely, and it goes back to the the behavioral economics piece, and those gaps that we're starting to recognize now, and trying to figure out a way to inculcate them into the greater population. But whatever the challenge, whatever the barrier, can't stop us. This is far too important, and we collectively, please, as you go from here today, if you have thoughts and ideas about how we can better do this, and continue to search out those who are starting to develop more ideas and answers to this, by all means, let us know, and we'll certainly incorporate them.
You got some great feedback here, and I had mentioned would people like you to come back, and some people said absolutely. How can parents effectively teach children on finances when parents are not on the same page on how to handle finances and manage money? One manages money while the other spends.
Well, again, that's that's the dilemma. but I kind of amusingly tell people that our True Wealth approach is really an adult's program in a kid's package. These values and concepts are things that the parents can use themselves. But if nothing else, if we cannot get to those parents to change their mindsets and behaviors and that, we have got to get to at least the school systems so that we can give the children, the next generation, at least some of the basic core values and that hopefully can impact their lives.
Someone is asking if you could repeat the quote about engineering the future. Do you remember what that quote was? Something in your slides, I guess? Oh,
yeah. We cannot engineer the... hang on. You'd think I'd have all these things memorized by now. No. I think it's something that it's difficult to engineer the future if we don't understand the... Oh, here we go. Trying to engineer the future without understanding the past is like trying to plant cut flowers. Okay. By Mr. George F. Will.
Thanks, Rob. Great information, Rob. It's scary to think that some kids get angry if they have to save.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, again, if you remember nothing else from today, that's the mindsets that if we're not having conversations with kids, that's what a lot of them are growing up. That's the attitudes because they're doing without or they're being challenged not to get something. And it goes back to, again, I think the behavioral side of this and the being given kind of just the limited either or proposition and not understanding there are different ways that they can deal with their money. And we really have to change that.
Some social workers at times work with children who have parents that do not believe in an allowance. If we are unable to encourage the parents to join in teaching the children about responsible financial learning, how would we work with them?
Well, it's two things. I guess, again, as I said at the outset of this today, my job is to inform and to raise the questions. I would go back to those parents and ask them, are you satisfied with what your kids are right now? You know, what is the future that you would envision for them? And possibly share with them some of the research and the findings that we're having out there that if they don't, if their children don't understand and fail or spend the rest of their lives struggling with money, then that's the legacy they're responsible for. You know, when I see that, you know, at the end of 2008, the fastest growing age group filing for bankruptcy was 18 to 24-year-olds. And we were losing more students out of our colleges and universities to personal debt than we were to academic failure. Something's wrong. And is that the future they want to pass on to their children?
You know, in my own work, I find so many people who are interested in the concept of financial therapy, financial social work, and who work with client populations trying to teach financial literacy, et cetera, that a lot of people feel there are so many urgent issues. And of course, we have we just have so many so much time with clients, and there are so many social problems, and lots of people feel, this just isn't one. I was going to say, we have the hierarchy of need, and so people have to have food, clothing, shelter. It's an issue that has often been overlooked, even though at the root of so many social problems, it comes down to money. And we go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, but again, it's that mindset that we go into it with. We go into it with what we've been taught, what our beliefs are, and so on. And if you go back to one of our earlier slides in our poll question there, money's never ever the problem. It's about all those other choices that we make, and if we understand that, but we transfer that emotion over to the money, and we never, or I wouldn't say never, but we don't really deal with what the real root of the issues are.
Well, this has been so wonderful, and I know some others have comments on here, but we're really a half an hour over now, and I want to thank everyone. So many of you have stayed with us, and Rob, you just got great feedback here. People really appreciated your time, your effort, your advice, and I hope you will come back and do another webinar for us.
I would love to. Again, Rita, I appreciate you for giving me this forum and this opportunity and access to not only the folks in your database, but hopefully some of the folks that we were able to contact as well. And for those of you on the line, please let me add my appreciation for the privilege of taking some of your time this afternoon to go through this. I'm always available as well, and if you missed my contact information, it's on that that slide, and we can send it out with an email follow-up with the survey and so on. But again, thank you, and I hope you found the afternoon to be of some help.
I'm sure they did. I know I did. And I'd like to wish everyone a very money-wise summer. And I hope we'll see you back here next month for our next webinar. Have a good one, everybody. Bye now.
Thank you all.
Rob, thanks so much. Let's talk later. I know you have a meeting. All right.
Yeah, if you've got 10 minutes, I'll give you a call.
Okay, great. Absolutely. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.